Food tolerance.
Uh-oh.
Is it really the food?
Uh-oh. Let's
Let's
see.
deep dive into this. Part one. We's about to find out. Well, people are sensitive these days.
Yeah, more like it
Freaking
is.
ridiculous,
Yes.
right? They're what are they sensitive about?
Everything.
Their feelings, their thoughts, their clothing, their
Their
judgment,
their labels.
the labels, so many labels,
Yeah.
right?
Not just food labels.
This is true. Oof, oh, not just food labels. But now even their food,
Yep.
right? So why the heck are you so sensitive? Maybe not you, but maybe like somebody you know is like, man, they are so sensitive.
Yeah, it's a world full of special
This
snowflakes.
is true. Well, if we were to think about it, the world's changed, right? We have an abundance of food. We got grocery stores. We have the push of a button with Uber Eats.
Nope.
We're in Austin, so we got all the restaurants, like all the food restaurants.
I feel like with more conveniences, people become, I don't know if it's necessarily entitled. It's one of my favorite examples is like now if you get on an airplane and there's no Wi-Fi, it's like the end of the world.
Oh,
Whereas
yes.
like, 10, 20, 15, I have no idea how many years ago, but like it wasn't even an option. Like even flying wasn't an option. But now you get on an airplane, if the Wi-Fi is down for a couple minutes, like, oh, this is ridiculous. And people get so sensitive, they get outraged that how is this possible? And so as the world changes and things become more convenient, we get entitled or use those conveniences. So I think it makes us more sensitive when things don't go our way.
For sure. And then we also, our food, not only do we have an abundance of it and it makes it easy to shovel in our mouth, it's easier to consume, once again, making it easier to shove into our mouth. Things, they have an increased palatability. So what that means is we're focused on, oh, they got to have really good taste. They got to have a good mouth feel. They got to smell good because, we start digesting when we look at it, when we see it, whether we were hungry or not. As soon as we see certain foods, we're like, I can fucking eat,
Yeah.
right?
So realistically, they've just made food better, like
Yeah,
more enticing. You want it, you see something, it's like, oh, like I gotta have it. And then as soon as you bite into it, it's like, yes, this is
yeah,
it.
that's
I
part of
want I
marketing.
want more of that. And
Yeah,
so like, well played, good
yeah,
job. You're making it even better.
yeah. And even like the fact that we have packaged goods, like we created them to make it easier for people who don't have a lot of time. So like pros and cons to any of these types of things. Guess what? We're stressed. We
Yep.
have more stress than ever. We may not be running from a lion.
Maybe it's because we're
Um,
so sensitive, we get
yeah,
stressed really easy. Who knows?
gosh, oh, geez.
Correlation versus causation. I have no idea what's, who's to blame.
Totally. But whether you're stressed from your job, financially, emotionally, we're just sensitive, like he mentioned. Our work has changed. A lot of us work from home. When COVID hit, guess what? We were stuck inside our houses. And now even a lot of people have transitioned to that. So like pros and cons, but we are moving a lot less, the majority of us.
Yeah, and even if do go into an office, you don't work from home, like you're in an office, like you're sitting down, like there are still a lot of people that have physical jobs that are out and about. But even when they aren't working, they're probably more sedentary.
For sure. And then even medical advancements. So like, yes, it is amazing that we have all of this technology. And now we have all of these different like antibiotics and whatnot. But the challenge is that like we've become a society that's like, oh, I got a cough, cold, sneeze. Like I want to be cured right away or fixed or I want to get better faster. So I'm going to take antibiotics even if they don't need them, which
Yep.
has now created resistant bacteria.
It's kind of like say it's like there's an app for that. It's like there's probably a pill for that.
Yes.
Anything right
Yeah.
now, it's like, oh, or you watch TV, it's like, oh, cool, like you can cure being distracted, but side effects, you may die from diarrhea. It's like, oh, well, at least I won't be distracted.
This is true. But what we're seeing is it may not be the food's fault, all right? Because we're all sensitive. So let's kind of deep dive into these outside factors that also affect your digestion. So think about the foundational fundamentals and that body spectrum that we had talked about in that good versus bad food lesson. And so, for instance, if we're going back to stress, like stress is stress, chronic stress, it affects the way that you digest foods. It affects your immune system. It causes you to be inflamed more, so like you're inflamed, your intestines are like, oh, they're all in this disarray. I can't digest my food properly. It must be the food. It's like, well, no, maybe it's you.
Yeah. Well, and even think about like obviously like that's the same for acute stress, but the reality
Yep.
is that most people in day-to-day life now have some form of chronic stress. So you think like back in the day it was like, oh, like I'm being chased by a lion and that stresses me out, so I shouldn't necessarily sit and eat right afterwards. But now today Everyone has, they have the acute stress, but the majority of people have some form of chronic stress. So we always have that heightened sense of, fight or flight. So it makes it hard for our body to do what it needs to do because it's amped out.
Yeah. Think about like if you've ever done so like I remember like back in the day when we used to do mud runs.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
Prior to, I might have had to mud run prior to the mud run
Yep.
because I was nervous and stressed.
Yep.
So just saying,
Yeah.
some people might have
So,
sensitive mouths out there.
Anxious bowels, right? It's the same thing.
Exactly.
That is a very physical, like it's a great example of like, oh, what happens to your body stress? Shit your pants
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, this is true. Sleep, what we have all of this stimulation, and a lot of us like sometimes you might walk around with the whole like, I can operate off of 6 hours of sleep or 5 hours of sleep, or I don't need no sleep. But when you are sleeping, that is when your gut lining is being repaired. That is helping you like with your immune system. And so basically, if you're not getting enough sleep, like you got a shitty immune system probably, which then causes you to respond or be more sensitive or to react to certain things a lot easier. And maybe your gut's not healing properly. Thinking about exercise, like, are you actually moving? If we thought about like what we talked about, a lot of us are sitting down. Are you walking? Are you lifting weights? Are you doing some form of exercise? Because exercise does support your immune health. It supports your gut health. It helps with stress reduction. It helps with inflammation. It helps with all of these different types of things.
It'll also help with sleep. I'll tell you right now,
Yep.
like if you have trouble sleeping, and you physically exert yourself, you'll be able to sleep. So exercising can reduce stress and it can actually help you with better rest.
For sure. Then also thinking about our body makeup. So like how much muscle mass do you have versus the amount of like body fat that you have? Because when you have more muscle mass, guess what? Your body is going to require like in order to support that muscle mass, it needs more nutrients, it needs more calories. But all of these different things help with your ability to tolerate certain foods. And if we were to think about like, well, if you don't have as much muscle mass and you have more body fat, well, more fat makes your body feel more inflamed, like it causes inflammation within your body. You also have all types of different like abnormal hormone regulations, thinking about like insulin and diabetics, thinking about cortisol, that chronic stress, thinking about testosterone. But basically, the more body fat that you have, it causes a lot of inflammation within your body, which can affect how you process foods and your sensitivity to foods.
And this isn't necessarily like a black and white make or break statement, but if you think about it like this, is like the more muscle you have or the stronger you are, the more tolerant you are, right? The more you can handle. And then same thing the other way. It's like, hey, look, if you're not necessarily as strong, you carry a little bit more body fat than you would want, then you become a little bit more intolerant. So you have
You're softer.
a greater
You're softer to things.
but you have a greater sensitivity, right? And so it's like, all right, cool. Like the stronger you are, the less sensitive you are. The more strength that you want, then the more sensitive you may be. As just like a fun, like food for thought.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's also, once again, like current disorders, like do you have Crohn's disease? Do you have celiac disease? Do you have like maybe IBS or IBD? Are you a type 1 diabetic, a type 2 diabetic? Because obviously, like if you have a certain disorder, like that is obviously going to affect the way in which you process foods and your sensitivity to certain foods, as well as make the decision if you are able to eat particular foods now and or ever when it comes to your intake of those things. So what we're saying is there's a lot of factors to think about, and it's not just the food. So in conclusion, it might not be the food's fault that you don't respond well to the actual food. So reflecting back, like how does your actual foundation look? Like your stress, your sleep, your activity level. Like what's the current state of your body? Like do you have a lot of muscle? Do you have a lot of body fat? Do you have any current disorders or diseases that may be affecting it?
But it's one of those things where it's important to kind of take a look at everything that's involved before you point the finger. I know a lot of times, especially in today's day and age, it's really easy to just point the finger and say like, oh well, this is what's happening. We've even worked with people where it's like they start eating healthier and it's like, oh, broccoli's giving me a headache. It's like, is it really the broccoli? Like there's probably a lot of other things.
Yeah, they ate a whole bunch of junk food in the day after. They're like, I'm gonna eat broccoli. It's like, well, I
It's
have
like
a
I have a
headache. It's
headache.
like,
Yeah, it's
what's
like
the broccoli?
yeah, like, well, you also stop drinking, a bunch of caffeine or like all of these other things that you were doing. So like maybe it's a withdrawal headache from something else, but who knows? But like before we jump to conclusions and point the finger, it's really taking a look at the whole picture. It's like, all right, like what's going on, what led up to this, so you can make a fair assessment on what's happening.
Yep. So it may not be the food's fault, but join us for part 2 of food tolerances, because what if it is the food's fault?
Uh-oh.
But if you have any questions, be sure to submit a burning question or apply for a breakthrough session inside the Fit Foodie coaching course.